Brace yourself. Get it passed up anytime now. Collect yourself. Does it ever be the same in that sad world? Walk around the light a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So sit back in your hole.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. Fabulous secret powers revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power." Okay, clearly that was among the more cringe things you've ever seen a teacher do, and clearly I am not Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. I am Mr. Childers, and I am thrilled to welcome you to Arthurian Legend in World Literature at Four Corners Upper School. On your schedule, it will probably simply say World Literature Honors, but if that is your class, you are in the right place. Why did I open this video so weirdly? Well, it's because there was a time in my life where those words you just heard were absolutely what I lived for. The cartoon He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the Masters of Universe line of toys, the most popular line of toys and cartoon for boys in the 1980s when I was a little dude. That was my jam. That was my life. I would stand in front of the TV. Those were the words that the main character, Prince Adam, also known as He-Man, would say at the beginning of every episode. And I would stand in front of the TV with a pencil or a toy sword or a pen or a stick or whatever I could find in my hand. Here I am. This is probably 1983 Christmas time. And I would say those words along with him on the TV. The story that was being told in that cartoon series was something when I was little that grabbed me by the heart and spoke to me. I was more interested in that than anything going on in the supposed real world. I lived for that story, with that story, by that story, in conversation with that story. Does that make me a weirdo? Well, I'm a weirdo, but that's not what makes me a weirdo, because living our lives in conversation with stories is part of what it is to be human. If you were to ask my main man Aristotle what a human being is, he would say a human being is a rational animal, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. Otherwise, Aristotle would not be my main man. But a much more recent figure, Jonathan Gottschall, you know that name, and you know where I'm going with this if you've taken some of my previous courses. Jonathan Gottschall defines human beings a little differently. He calls us storytelling animals. This is not just a description of something we do, but it is at the most fundamental level, according to Gottschall, it is who we are. We are the animals, just like every other animal, but what sets us apart from the rest is that we are the animals that tell stories. It's not as if, dogs tell crappy stories and monkeys tell better stories and humans tell good stories because we're high on the animal chain. It's something that, at least in the known universe, is uniquely human. We are the creature that tells stories. And that's what this course is all about. The stories we tell, and specifically the stories we tell by way of the written word. That's what literature is. This particular video is designed especially for people who are part of our class who are not able to be with us on the first day of class. including those who transfer into the class later. So if that's not you, if you're a part of our class, but you're going to be here or were here on the first day, well, you're welcome to keep watching the video and preview what you're in for, but you're under no obligation to do so. So if you haven't already gone away, you're welcome to stop watching right now. But if you're not with us on the first day, or if you've transferred in new to the class, please do stick around and get a taste of what you're in for. So as I said, my name is Mr. Childers, and this course is Arthurian Legend in World Literature. It's about the stories we tell. And we all do this. In fact, two of the biggest stories in our civilization go a little something like this. Just according to demographics, there's a good chance that the majority of people in this room live their lives based on one or both of these two stories. And I do say both because it's not an either or. We have the ability to shift from one narrative to the other, though some latch on specifically to one or the other, whereas others keep the two in conversation. Story number one. From nothing came everything. Without cause, or at least without cause that can be understood, untold billions of years ago, the universe as we know banged bigly into existence. And with it, the laws of physics governed the movement of matter in such a form that over the eons, things became increasingly complex, more and more complex. Until about 4 billion years ago, 4.5 billion years ago, here on this planet Earth, for the only known time in the universe, something amazing happened within simple matter. Simple chemical reactions resulted in the emergence of piles of stuff that could make copies of themselves. And this was the earliest form of life. And these early living things, possessed by two driving instincts, the instinct to survive and the instinct to reproduce, did just that. And as they reproduced, mutations occurred, which caused the next generation to have ever so slight differences from the generation that came before it. And those differences that made it more likely for the creatures to continue to survive and reproduce, those differences, those mutations were passed down and over time developed the amazing and beautiful complex diversity of life on Earth, including ourselves. This whole process of natural selection, first identified by Charles Darwin in the 19th century, is the story that drives everything in the universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And there was a word, a logos, a mind. And that mind was with God, and that mind was God. And God created man and woman in his own image, wishing for them to be fruitful and multiply and to live in happiness and peace and love. And yet, we were imperfect. We were subject to temptation. Sometimes we were selfish. We chose wrong, and the world fell. The world became a place of darkness, death, chaos, and war. But God did not turn a blind eye to his creation, but instead became one with it, took on flesh, and dwelt among us in the person of Jesus Christ, who offered himself as a sacrifice for sins. The ultimate goal of life, according to this story, is to walk with Christ now and to live with him forever in glory. Natural selection and Christianity, the two most popular stories in our civilization. And there are many others. The story of Islam, the story of Hinduism, the story of Wicca, the story of Marxism, the story of cultural Marxism and critical race theory and gender theory. And there are all sorts of stories competing for our attention. And we're not necessarily required to pick or choose one of them. Several of them, but not all, can live together in a sort of tense dance within us. But the process of living a life that's meaningful is really predicated on entering into conversation with the stories that have been being told by the people who came before us, and passing down those stories, those traditions, to the people that will come and share this world after us. We especially like stories. We're especially drawn to stories that take average, ordinary people and thrust them into extraordinary situations. So I mentioned the He-Man story. This is another story that meant much to me as a child, and that I'm a dork, so it continues to mean a lot to me today. Some of you will recognize this guy, Dr. Bruce Banner, nuclear physicist, develops this powerful gamma bomb, and then needing to save the life of a young person who has driven on to the bomb testing site, is caught in the heart of the nuclear explosion. All the comics used to open that way, caught in the heart of a nuclear explosion, victim of gamma radiation gone wild. Dr. Robert Bruce Banner now finds himself, well, in our world, if you get caught in the heart of a nuclear explosion, you would find yourself either blowed up real good or riddled with cancer. But we know that in this story, something extraordinary happened. He now finds himself transformed in times of stress into 7 feet, 1,000 pounds of unfettered fury, the most powerful mortal ever to walk the earth, the Incredible Hulk. Why do we like stories like this? Maybe you're like, I don't like stories like this. Well, you can shut it. Why do sane people like stories like this? See, the stories that take ordinary people, unimpressive people, and throw them into extraordinary circumstances, those are the laboratories that we can use to prepare ourselves for all the unexpected adventures that we will go on in this life. Most of us will never, I hope, be caught in the heart of a nuclear explosion. Most of us will not transform into the Incredible Hulk. But by using our empathy to connect to the characters in the stories that we tell, we can prepare ourselves for the little mini apocalypses that we will endure and experience in this world. And we can do it in a way that we can become the heroes of our own story. Something happened in modern day Iraq centuries ago, but very late in the human story. An amazing invention, an almost magical invention was developed. And that was the invention of writing. See, writing, gamma rays don't really give us superpowers. Gamma rays give us cancer. But reading and writing really do give us superpowers. Because through reading and writing, I can communicate with the dead, and I can project my voice into the future. I can laugh and cry and share hopes and dreams and joys and sorrows with people who have been in their tombs for thousands of years. And I can share my own joys and sorrows with people who have not yet been born. That is the superpower given to us through literature. And that is what this course is all about. So what am I all about? All I want to do with you for the rest of our time together today is introduce myself, let you know who you'll be working with, and then on the second day of class, we'll talk about the particulars of this course. So my name's Jeff Childers. I'm 44 years old, at least as of recording this video. Knowing how lazy I am, I'll probably reuse this video over and over again, but as of August 9th, 2024, I'm 44 years old. I'm from Joliet, Illinois. I graduated from Minooka Community High School in Illinois in 1997. I hold a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy from Conception Seminary College in Missouri, and a Master of Arts degree in theology from St. Meinrad Seminary in 2017. I've been teaching at Four Corners Upper School since 2018. I came in here just before Christmas of 2018. And since joining Four Corners, I've taught geography, world history, US government, humanities, classical studies, ethics, world literature, and career planning. And I'm an adjunct professor of theology for Southeastern University and have been for about a year since August of 2023. I'll tell you a bit about my core values in education. This is something I'm adapted from the way I received my education, not so much my high school, but my college and graduate schools. But both my college and grad school were on the campuses of Benedictine monasteries. And so we're part of an educational tradition that stretches back into the tail end of the Roman era and the beginnings of the Middle Ages, and are governed by some really well thought out philosophical educational principles that have been continued to be developed by Rome. And I like to speak of education being something that has three pillars. In my schools, we spoke of four pillars, but in this adapted version, we'll speak of three pillars. For me, the three pillars of formation. I love that word. Think of how a potter forms clay into a vessel. That's what we're doing here in a school. We're not just here to check some requirements off of a box. We're not just here to be yapped at and to memorize some data and to pass some tests and to provide some data to some administrator. We are here working together in this community in the process of forming one another into the people that we are growing to be, so that we all might flourish together as human persons, achieving the full potential of our dignity and happiness. In this method, the three main pillars of this formation are human formation, academic formation, and vocational formation. Human formation is about what I just described. It's about assisting one another to become the ideal, the most virtuous, the best versions of themselves. It's not so much about being a good student or learning how to be a good engineer or a good lawyer, a good doctor, a good nail tech. It's about learning to be good, to be formed and to grow and to thrive as the best humans possible. The second pillar is academic formation. That's the intellectual angle. That is the development of knowledge. Knowledge for its own sake. Knowledge is one of those things that we call intrinsically good. We don't simply pursue knowledge in order that we may get something else, though we will. The more knowledge you get, the more happiness you'll have, the more money you'll make, all that. That's not why we pursue it. We pursue it because it is good. That's the second pillar of formation, academic formation. And then the third we'll call vocational. The third is that not intrinsic good, but instrumental good. What is good because it gets you something else. So this is the pillar where we look forward to what you want to do and where you want to be in the future, to be prepared for college and to be prepared for a successful career. That is a very important component of education. Many voices, well-intended, but I wholeheartedly believe wrong voices, will present that as the most important thing in education, to prepare you for college, to prepare you to make money, to be part of the money-making machine. I say no, that's important, but it's secondary. I believe in you may not hear it, but in education and in the education profession, we hear very often the buzzword data-driven education. Right? It's all about getting you to meet certain benchmarks, to check certain accomplishments off the list. It's not cynical, it's very well intentioned, but it's also it's not where I'm coming from. I'm not driven by data. I'm not driven by test scores. I'm driven by persons, by people. I'm driven by building a community of dignified young men and young women and empowering them to discover their own voices, to learn how best to thrive in this world as the builders of the future families of this world that will keep our civilization growing. So I am driven by your good, not by your grades. Another of my core values is your right to safety. And here I'm not using the language of, we don't need to get into all the controversies. I'm not using the language of safe space where you have the right to be protected from any ideas you don't already agree with or any information you don't already know. That is childish and harmful. But I am, of course, committed to your actual safety, your physical well-being, and your emotional well-being. You will be emotionally challenged. You will encounter perspectives other than your own. You will encounter things that make you uncomfortable, and I think that's good. But you will not be harassed. You will not be mistreated. You will not be spoken to as if you were anything other than a unique individual of inestimable dignity and value while you're in this room. And if that happens to you in any other room in this building, I will be among the first to advocate on your behalf. That said, I believe you've got the right to be uncomfortable. Okay? We cannot grow. We cannot grow if we are exposed only to the ideas that we already agree with and only to people who see the world the same way we do. You know, if that were the case, I would just stay home and talk to myself in the mirror all day. How dreadfully dull a world would that be? We often hear that diversity is our strength, and I believe that is one of our key strengths in this community. We have people with origins from all over the world, bringing perspectives from all over the world to us, and I love that. Diversity of thought is also our strength. And so, yes, you have not only the obligation, but the right to occasionally be made uncomfortable by the ideas that you encounter in a classroom. One of the things you'll hear me talk about, or you'll hear me say a lot, are these words: ask me after you graduate. Because it is so important to me that my students encounter a multitude of perspectives, different ways of looking from the world, from different historical perspectives, religious perspectives, political perspectives, philosophical perspectives. I'm extra careful about making sure that almost none of those perspectives are advertised as mine. My courses are about giving you space and giving you tools to empower you to build and craft your own well-reasoned worldview, and a well-reasoned worldview that is devoted to the common good. It is not my place to seek to influence you with my own opinions, my own ideas. Doesn't mean you'll never get my opinion on anything. It does mean that when, in those rare cases where I do give my opinion on something that's controversial, I will always make every effort to give you this flashing red light warning. This is just my opinion, and you're not required to share my opinion. But most of the time, when it comes to controversial issues, when it comes to identity issues, political things, religious things, God, Donald Trump, legalize weed, my answer is going to be, ask me after you graduate. No teacher in a public school setting is allowed to force political or religious or philosophical views on any student. Because of the kinds of ideas we talk about in my class, I hold myself to a stricter standard on that. Right? Which means if you have another teacher who happens to mention he or she goes to church at this certain place or something like that, it doesn't mean that teacher is violating any code of ethics, provided they're not treating you any differently if you don't share their perspective. But I prefer to keep all of that stuff outside of the classroom when it comes to my own perspective. So if you want, I've had students who've kept a running list and will interview me at the end of their senior year, and then they will get my whole life story and what I actually think about everything. But until then, remember these words: ask me after you graduate. Really already hit this one. I believe that college and career prep are secondary to human formation and to the passionate pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, but nevertheless are crucially important. And so I do make great effort to see to it that my courses are designed in a way that do adequately help prepare you for college and for careers, although that is not my main focus. Couple of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I try to do in all of my courses. My academic background is in philosophy. Philosophy, the love of wisdom. The philosophy is a love of wisdom that inspires us to seek rational answers to big questions so that we might live and die well. So I'm really passionate about integrating philosophy and the history of ideas, the exploration of where these philosophical, religious, political, cultural ideas and cultural memes come from, and then integrating that into the high school curriculum. And some schools, you'll never talk about philosophy until you get to college. I think that is a shame. And sometimes that the notion of integration, the fact that reality is a unified whole, a diverse whole, but a unified whole. And that what you do, I'm using whole with a W, whole as in the entire, that what you do on the other side of the school in the biology class, and then in the algebra class, and then down in the gym, and then up here in the humanities course, that they're not these separate, disconnected things with no relationship to each other, that they are deeply interwoven and integrated and go on to make up a single whole reality. That's an important thing to recognize, because without it, it seems like education just becomes a list of disconnected things that nobody gives about, and it just has to be checked off a box. And my goodness, I was also in high school too, so I know you won't always want to be in this room, but while you're in this room, your time's not going to be wasted. I don't want to waste an hour of your time without trying to build some sense of integration of the different subjects we explore. Not only is there a danger of wasting an hour of your time, there's a danger of wasting 12 years of your time, the 12 years of your time designed to help prepare you for life. And if you enter life unprepared, well, then now you're in danger of wasting all of your life. And last time I checked, we're only promised the one of those. Last thing for today. I'm very big on what I call the critical reappropriation. There's all these big words. What is this, school, man? Why you got to use big words? We come here to learn stuff. Critical reappropriation of traditional themes, values, stories, and images. So most of my head time is spent in the past, in either in history or in the ideas and the stories that were told by our ancestors and our forebears centuries and even millennia ago. And I value the past greatly. That is not to say that I think we should go back in time to the past. I think that right now, today, this minute, the year 2024 is absolutely the best time to ever have been alive for almost every man, woman, and child on earth by almost every meaningful metric. At the same time, we only got to where we are by building on the thoughts, on the dreams, on the stories, on the hopes, on the traditions, rituals, beliefs of the people that came before us. And I think there's a tendency sometimes in our culture to think that, once we moved on to something new, that we can discard everything that came before us, as if as if somehow our ancestors were stupid. There are things we know that they didn't know, of course, but we only know them because they built the structures that we've inherited that have allowed us to learn these things. So I like to sort of hit the brakes on this turning away from tradition and turning away from the past, and instead look back at what has come before us and say, what of this remains of enduring value? And are there perhaps, I won't often answer the question for you, but I will pose the question to you. Are there elements of our traditions and the traditions of our ancestors and the beliefs of the people that beliefs and values of the people that came before us, the way they viewed family, the way they viewed purpose and meaning in life? Are there elements of that we have turned away from that perhaps we could benefit from returning to? It will almost never be my place to propose answers to those questions for you. But I do feel it's an important part of my role as someone guiding you in your formation to raise those questions for you. So I'm glad you've joined us for Arthurian legend in world literature. Here's our good friend King Arthur, who we will be saying a lot more about in the weeks and months to come. Tomorrow we'll say a little bit more about him. We'll talk about why on earth, in a course called World Literature, did I decide to make my main focus this long dead, if he ever actually lived, British king, and why you should care about him. Look at this awesome, by the way, this awesome King Arthur Sword in the Stone statue, gifted to me by 2024 graduate Elvis Spencer Tuescher. All right, join us again for next class. Good to meet you, even though this is video and we have not met. The end.
Walk around the ladder bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million bits and pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So slip back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with me.